A lot of people are going to have to pay. No other president should have to go through. And I'll tell you, General Flynn and others are heroes because what's happened to them, they weren't after General Flynn. They wanted him to lie about me, make up a story.
Fox News alert now on strong new reaction from President Trump. This after newly declassified documents identify the Obama officials who requested the unmasking of Michael Flynn. The most prominent name on that list, former Vice President Joe Biden. Joining us now from the North Lawn, White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany. Kayleigh, good morning to you. What is the president and the White House saying about all this morning?
That there are very real questions about what is the biggest political scandal in history, namely the fact that more than nearly 50 times, I should say, General Michael Flynn was unmasked. And this wasn't by intelligence officials entirely. It was by political officials. Why were political officials like the former vice president requesting his identity be revealed? Why was the Secretary of Treasury? Why was the Chief of Staff? Why was the UN ambassador? This is extremely alarming. Michael Flynn had Fourth Amendment rights, and here you have the former administration putting a target on the incoming administration. That is incredible, and every network should be covering this, but right now it's getting scant coverage.
Yeah, Kayleigh, on that point, a lot of networks are not covering it, and they're saying that this is kind of standard practice. It is legal, we should point out, to unmask someone if you have that power, if you have access to that. But it is illegal, as you know, to then leak out classified information, as clearly happened since it was published in the Washington Post. So what was the motive there, do you think? Were they setting a narrative? What was going on?
The motive was the entrapment of Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. Look, on January 4th, it is written down that the FBI was closing this case because Michael Flynn was no longer a viable candidate for investigation. The very next day, on January 5th, you have this Oval Office meeting where President Obama is there and Sally Yates, and where Sally Yates learned about Michael Flynn's conversation from President Obama, and she was so shocked at what she was learning that she could barely process information, is what the reporting says. Beyond that, in this meeting in front of President Obama, you have Jim Comey bringing up the Logan Act, a statute not ever used in its entire more than 200-year history to prosecute an American. Why was that brought up? Was this the entrapment of Lieutenant General Michael Flynn? We certainly know it was entrapment from the FBI notes, but there are some big questions about that Oval Office meeting.
I want to get reaction from the White House this morning to Judge Emmett Sullivan keeping this case alive. As we know, as of yesterday, opening to interested third parties to weigh in on all this, and now taking on this judge who has been openly critical of President Donald Trump to argue against the motion to dismiss this case. What is the reaction from the White House on that?
Well, the judge should follow the facts, and the facts clearly show, as outlined in the DOJ document, that this case was corrupt from the very beginning. They were about to close it, and then Peter Strzok celebrated the, quote, serendipitously good news that they were incompetent in not closing the case, and found a pretext to go into Michael Flynn's office, encourage him not to have a lawyer, and trap him. And when they left, even Andy McCabe says there was no lie here. So this was very corrupt from the beginning. There was no lying to investigators, as has been alleged, and the judge should follow the facts.
Okay. Kayleigh, pardon me 1 second. So let's bring back the White House Press Secretary, Kayleigh McEnany. Get a fair hearing. You had a chance to listen. He had a chance to lay out his concerns. Let's get you to react to anything there, but specifically when he says the pandemic playbook was ignored. Your response?
Yeah, it sounds like Mr. Bright hasn't really been paying much attention at all. In fact, when he talks about the pandemic playbook, we actually put into place a pandemic preparedness document with recommendations long before the pandemic ever came. It sounds like he hasn't been paying attention when he suggests that Americans should social distance and wash their hands. These are all things we've said millions of times, probably at this point, when you count everyone at the White House who has been saying it. Sounds like he wasn't paying attention when he talked about building up a stockpile and equipment. Perhaps he's unaware of the 90 million N95 respirators the president's delivered, 3 times what the healthcare industry consumes in an average year, the billion gloves that we've delivered, the many more pieces of PPE. It sounds like this is someone who's reacting and making suggestions that have long been put into play. And the notion that we're not letting scientists speak, maybe he's not aware that on every Sunday morning you hear oftentimes from Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx, they're consistently out on the airwaves. Maybe he's missed those appearances.
Kayleigh, the president in that new interview with Maria Bartiromo says we have to get our schools open. Obviously, Dr. Fauci expressed his concerns in his testimony the other day with that. So the president's push for that would be in contrast for where Dr. Fauci stands now. How hard does the president plan to push to reopen our schools, whether it be at the grade school, middle school, high school level, or even the university level?
So he wants to see schools open. He's made that clear. He's also made clear the governors take the lead on creating their plans. Yesterday, the vice president and Dr. Birx had a discussion with some heads of universities about how to safely reopen. So we're providing guidance on that front. There are millions of parents across the country who are having to be educators while also working at home, while also being moms and dads. We want to alleviate that burden. We want kids to get back to school. That's what the president has made clear.
Kayleigh, you just said a moment ago that the president does listen to scientists and that you put him out there on the Sunday talk shows, as you noted, whether it's Dr. Birx, Dr. Fauci. And so let's get beyond the criticism that Dr. Bright leveled, and let's get at whether or not you agree as White House press secretary with sort of his medium to long range view, I guess, into the fall and winter. He says that he thinks we're going to be headed for the darkest winter in American history. Do you agree, disagree, why?
So first, let me note where we are currently. I talked to Dr. Birx yesterday afternoon, and what she noted to me was that as we're increasing mobility in some of these states, we're not seeing an increase in cases. And in fact, she showed me a graph of a few places like Miami-Dade that's reopening, Atlanta, Georgia that's reopening, and she showed me that mobility is going like this, but cases are going like this. So there's actually an inverse correlation, what we're seeing with some of these states reopening. That's encouraging to see. And so where we are now is at a place where cases are coming down, mortality is coming down. We're looking forward to the fall. No one knows what we'll face in the fall, but what we do know is this: we are prepared for this. We have testing available to do strategic testing. We have a stockpile. We have 100,000 ventilators that were produced in 100 days or are being produced. We are ready for what lies ahead, but we're at a place where we can reopen this country at this very moment.
Kayleigh, a look at the Dow this morning. It's off several hundred points. It's reacting to the latest jobless claims numbers that have come out now, showing 3 million applied for those benefits in the last week alone. The total now coming to 36.5 million since this outbreak began in this country. The president is talking about a sharp rebound in the economy. Markets seem to be reacting to these numbers, wondering if the worst is behind us. So what can you tell us the president is saying about those new jobless numbers this morning?
So the president has said the third quarter is going to be a rebound quarter. The fourth quarter he sees and thinks it will be very encouraging. And then next year he thinks will be booming. He recognizes a pent-up demand that is there that will fuel this economy. We've pumped trillions of dollars of stimulus in. And as we get back to work, the president wants encouraging things like the payroll tax, which will help to alleviate the burden on employers to create jobs, which will be a pay raise for every American who's working, and especially low and middle income Americans. He has plans to shore up this economy, and he recognizes a pent-up demand that's there and ready to fuel the hottest economy in modern history once again, which he brought us once and will do a second time.
But Kayleigh, in terms of what comes next, in terms of Congress and dealing with the economic crisis that Sandra lays out, the Fed chairman, as you know, yesterday, part of the reason why the markets have been reacting is the Fed chairman said that this virus could cause permanent economic damage without more intervention by Congress. Yet, as you know, the president and the Republican leader, Mitch McConnell, have said they don't, in the short term, want Congress to intervene. They want to let this play out for a while. So why is the president in contradiction here with his own Fed chair?
Well, the fourth, I think you're referring to the fourth iteration package on coronavirus. First, let me note that what the Democrats put forward is entirely unacceptable. It is a wish list. It's a big payout to donors and to lobbyists, and allows illegal immigrants to get direct payments. It's an unacceptable prospect. We've pumped $3 trillion into this economy so far. And before we move on to a phase 4, the president wants to think very carefully about how we're using taxpayer dollars and make sure that we move forward with a smart phase 4, not a Democrat wish list. So he will be looking at that, but he's taking his time as he decides how to use taxpayer money.
Does the president believe that any stimulus, additional stimulus, is needed for the American people other than just reopening the economy? Does he believe any more money needs to go to the American families that are struggling?
So the president is open to a phase 4. He's willing to talk about it. He's mentioned that payroll tax cut several times, but he is very much opposed to the Democrat bill that has been put out, the wish list of paying illegal immigrants with taxpayer dollars, and the various other proposals like not allowing us to talk about very good, smart health care plans that are cheaper than Obamacare, like short-term, limited duration plans. Proposals like this are nonsensical. He's open to talking about a phase 4, but not the Pelosi bill.
Kayleigh McEnany, White House Press Secretary, we certainly appreciate you joining us today, especially given the breaking news, reacting in real time to the testimony on the Hill. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kayleigh.